The following program is intended for mature audiences.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. What's shaking?
It's Monday, and at least it's not raining.
Exactly. Look at you, looking on the positive side. I like that.
I got to find positivity any way I can.
It's me too, boy. I get it.
Because there's a lot of negative energy out there, so I got to look for anything positive that I possibly can, wherever I can.
I love it. Me too. I agree. Love it. What's going on, babe?
Well, I'm just, in the studio, working hard, looking to see what's going on, what's popping, and, we could talk to Kelly, Mr. Robert Kelly,
Sounds good to me. Happy to give you the skinny.
Yes, please give me the skinny, because last week it was reported that he got a little taste of jailhouse justice from a frustrated inmate who, I guess, allegedly attacked him. We've been hearing reports that inmates getting angry when pro-Kelly protesters come to the jail, and I guess the jail gets put on lockdown. So I thought we would call one of his attorneys, you, Nicole, and find out what is the skinny on Mr. Robert Kelly.
Listen, Bushman, I'm so glad that you reached out to me, because let me tell you something. What is being said in the media thus far regarding what happened last Wednesday over at the MCC in Chicago is simply just not correct. And I say that because I had an opportunity to speak with Robert. In fact, we are able to talk FaceTime. And I spoke with him Friday when he was finally let out of the shoe. And the allegations, or what MCC put out there, was that he was punched a bunch of times and he's fine, no injuries, and so forth. Right? Is that basically what you remember?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let me tell you, the story is not quite so easy. I wish it was. And I understand that there are people that in prison, you know what, you look the wrong way, you might get beat up. But what this was an individual, a white male, who had previously been on a phone call outside of Robert's cell and was MFing Robert, MFing, calling him a Nigger, saying he wants to get him, and so forth. As a result of that, Robert was quick to tell the authorities that he's very concerned for his safety because of what he heard this guy saying. Needless to say, that was about 3 weeks prior to this incident. Robert, in this particular incident, was sleeping. It was after 10 o'clock, closer to 10:30. He had just gotten off the phone. At 10 o'clock, he had a call. He goes to his room, decides to take a nap. When he sleeps, he puts the covers over his head. It was during the 2 hours that he and his cell block actually able to be outside and enjoying whatever they can try to enjoy there. And so he decides to go back to his cell. There's another individual, the individual I just told you about, who's got a tattoo on his head that says, like, F the Feds. He's 6'7". He had gone to psych, which is, like they're a therapist. And instead of being brought back to his cell after that, he walked directly to Robert's cell. Came into Robert's cell. Robert can only explain it as initially he's sleeping and the blankets over his head. All of a sudden he just feels pounding on his head. He's kind of tangled up in the cover, trying to get to it and see what's going on. By the time he's able to get out of the covers, he's on the bottom bunk, looking up, and this guy same guy we just talked about, is stomping on his head with his shoe. Stomping. And Robert is freaking out. Robert at that point sees, and while he's stomping, by the way, racial slurs left and right. He's pissed and upset about some protesters that Robert had nothing to do with. Because trust me, if Robert's the one who tried to get the protesters there, the whole prison would know because his phone calls are taped. So he's upset about the MCC putting everyone on lockdown because of people's right to protest. Then everyone in lockdown blames Robert because the MCC tells them all it's because of Robert's protesters. So he's screaming about that and adding his face with his foot. Robert sees him go for a pen that's behind his ear, similar to like how you put a cigarette behind your ear. The guy goes to grab the pen, and Robert says, he is scared for his life. He is freaking out. He's trying to figure out what the heck's going on. His cellie wasn't in the cell, coincidentally, at that very moment. And as soon as the guy actually goes for the pen, that's when they were both maced. Now, Robert tells me that they take them both out of the cell. Robert could barely breathe, he said, from being maced. In fact, he could barely talk, he said. Like, couldn't get words out. Meanwhile, the white individual, the attacker, is screaming still the top of his lungs, N-I-D-G-E-R, I'm going to get you, I don't care, I'm in here for murder, just obscenities beyond. And then, well, I should say, what that shows is that guy, maybe he's superhuman, but wasn't affected at all and or not maced, and Robert was. Then Bush, they decide to take Robert to medical, as they should. Robert describes medical as 12 or 13 people / nurses standing around him while the doctor, a female doctor there at MCC, comes in. He starts explaining to her all of his ailments. And she says, I'm going to x-ray your head. Apparently they did one x-ray of his head. They told him he was fine. Meanwhile, his entire forehead, I could see, I FaceTime with Robert. His entire forehead was swollen. He had a large, ball-shaped, a swollen part on the left of his left eyeball. He told me he was seeing black dots. He told me the pain in his head was excruciating to even speak or with light. And you know what they did?
What did they do?
They said, all right, we're taking you to the shoe. Now, for those of
please explain what the shoe is.
Yeah, so for those of us who are not familiar with the shoe, they call it that. It's solitary confinement. It's where prisoners go when they do bad things in prison and they don't know what else to do with them, but they put them there. They do not get the same luxuries or commissary or anything when they're in the shoe. It's basically a place to put for punishment. Well, Robert ends up being taken there, even though Robert says he knew the whole time that they knew what happened because everyone was talking about it as not being Robert's fault. Needless to say, they take Robert to the shoe and they put him in a solitary room with a bright light on him. It's probably the psych room, and a bed on the floor, and that was it. Then they take the stomper. Oh, a couple of cells down from him. The entire time Robert's in the shoe, the guy is screaming about how he's going to get him, swearing, racial slurs. It was preposterous. Needless to say, Robert was in the SHU for 2 nights, and guess what they gave him to help him with his head, because he claimed he had headaches. He felt like his rib was broken. They felt it, said, nah, it's not broken, you're fine. And guess what they gave to him for his pain? This incident started around closer to 10:30 in the morning. At 10 p.m., they gave him 2 Tylenols. He had been experiencing this pain and discomfort and real unsettling feeling for, I don't know, since that happened Wednesday, and when I was speaking to him, it was Friday morning, mid-morning. It's just a shame. And now here's the kicker of the whole thing that I couldn't even believe my ears. So Robert said on Friday morning they take him out of the SHU and they allow him to go back to his cell. However, she's got a new cell. And guess whose cell they put him in?
The Stomper.
Yes! They clear the Stomper stuff out, apparently, and they have all Robert's stuff in, Robert described it like as his luggage, even though it's not truly luggage. In the Stomper's room, and Robert's old roommate is moved into the Stomper's room with Robert, and that's where he is. And if that isn't some mental warfare that seems to be purposely going on there, I don't know what is. So that's what really happened. It's not as if some dude got, in a little scuffle. Robert is not a fighter. Robert is he's very a light talker, very soft spoken, and not in fighting people. This left his jaw. He literally showed it to me. He said they told him it wasn't broken, but he literally could move his jaw. It looked as if it was separated from the top, far to the left and far to the right. He can't open his mouth the whole way like he used to. And obviously, for purposes of stinging, it's not a good look.
Right.
So
now being on his defense team, where do you go from here with this?
Well, he's got a bond, an appeal of his bond on Friday in the second court of appeals, and they're going to be arguing about why it's appropriate for him to have a bond free.
Oh my God, that's a mess. If that's what really happened, that's horrible. Why would they take him back to general population and put him back in the cell with the same person that attacked him?
Oh, there it is. It's all kind of love. It's love. It's Mike Love from the Morning Mixtape Soul 1063, and we are here with 2 of R. Kelly's defense team, Nicole Becker and Doug Anton. Hello, folks.
Hello, Mike.
Welcome to the show. So what exactly is you guys' role on R. Kelly's legal team?
Thanks, Mike. So, Mike, I come from a background in which I specialize in sex crimes. I was the prosecutor in Detroit and in Macomb County for approximately 18 years. Ultimately, I was the chief of the sex unit. So I'm very familiar with how a case should be investigated, how a case should be charged, and ultimately how a case should be prosecuted. So Given that these are the exact charges in this particular case, I think it's imperative that Robert have someone on, Mr. Kelly, have someone on his side who truly understands that stuff frontwards and backwards.
Okay.
And so, role is to be his defense. Yeah, we're hearing our.
Make sure it's. Why don't you guys turn off your audio on that end?
All right, is that better?
Let's take a look. Any echoes? No, we're good.
All right. All right, so Doug, what about yourself?
I've been a practicing attorney for about 25 years, mostly criminal defense, entertainment, and sports law, dealing with a lot of entertainers, high-profile cases in both the criminal vein and in the entertainment and sports law vein. Nicole's right. We're all members of a team. Stephen is captain of that team. He's the local counsel and lead attorney on this matter, and he directs us in the parts of things he wants us to look at and do. The crux of our representation is going to be when the discovery is presented to all of us in full, and we sit down and put our collective minds together to decipher and rip apart that discovery so that justice be gleaned from it, and we're able to do the right thing by our client, and in turn, although it might not sound like it, by the people of the state of Illinois as well. So that is our roles as all attorneys working for a singular client, bringing our collective expertise to bear.
Now, staying with that theme of this big legal team, criminal, civil, child support, are you guys all on the same page? Because sometimes it seems that you know one piece of the puzzle doesn't know something about the other pieces.
Well, there's different aspects to that. So the child support matter is not something that we're involved in. So there's another counsel who's dealing with that, and he or she will do it whatever way they deem appropriate with the client. So we can't speak intelligently about that and what's going on, but only to assure you that it is being handled and done well. Now we take a step back. We have some other gentlemen who Steve has brought in and Robert has brought in to deal with a civil matter that deals with some of the same underlying criminal charges, but in a civil vein. Now, the interesting thing about this is that it's one of the victims in the alleged victims in the criminal matter has also brought this civil suit for money. Now, part of our defense is that some of these victims are quite possibly monetizing victimization. And in this one situation, we have an alleged victim who is asking for money for what has happened to her. And that is part of her complaint. I want money, because that's what you do in civil court. You sue for money. I want money for what I allege took place to me. And I'm also going to throw in some criminal charges, too, to make sure you really know that I want this money.
Right.
So that's what we have to face in the Illinois court. In New York, we have another matter that was filed by another alleged victim who is claiming no criminal charges, but I want money too, and that's her position. She wants money for whatever it is she alleges. I have a 22-page complaint that I was reading the other day. We're going to file an appearance this upcoming week, where somebody else is saying, I want money for what I'm alleging now 10, 15, 20 years later happened to me back then, and until I watched Lifetime, I kind of forgot about it. I say it with some level of jocularity, but it's not that far from that. You know, all of a sudden Lifetime comes out and everybody's like, oh yeah, I think I remember I should get paid some money for doing something now. And it's not that great of a thing to have take place when you're a recording artist of some celebrity stature who wants to just make a living and bring peace and joy and happiness to people.
So it's safe to say that surviving R. Kelly really lit a fuse under this entire case, or what you guys are dealing with in court right now?
Well, I think there's no doubt, right? Because, right, let's talk about the timeline. Timeline-wise, none of these things had even been brought to the forefront until prosecutor Fox came forward and made what was equivalent to a PA announcement, frankly, and asked, okay, where are my victims? Come on here, let's talk about it. Typically, it's the police department that has a crime happen that's reported, and then the police often which I can only imagine how much pressure that put on Chicago in general, Cook County, and then ultimately was just interestingly handled here at the prosecutor's office as well.
I've
Okay.
been practicing 25 years and I've never seen it. I've never seen a
Agreed.
prosecutor, right? I've never
Yes.
seen a prosecutor ever go on TV and say, "Everybody watch that show? Okay, let's go." It's like watching Jurassic Park and saying, "Anybody saw a dinosaur? Call us up." It's insane in the legal field to do.
Well, to be fair to Kim Fox, there's going to be a lot of pressure on her office. The man was acquitted years ago, and here are some very similar accusations resurfacing. So she's got to do something, right? She's got to.
Mike, ask you a question. If you were robbed on the street, do you need the prosecutor to go on TV and tell you to come in and file a complaint?
Absolutely not.
That's all I'm saying. If you're really robbed on the street, you do the thing you're supposed to do. You call the police. You make a police report. You do what you're supposed to do. You don't wait and sit at home and be like, geez, I wonder what I should do. Oh, the prosecutor wants me to come in and file a thing based on a TV show that was on the other night? Yeah, you know what? I think I'm going to do that. That just don't seem right.
Okay.
Listen,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, I've been on her side. I wasn't the head prosecutor of the entire county. However, I was the head or the chief of the sex unit. Okay, and justice needs to be served. Obviously, when there are real victims of crimes, that's why we're here, as both prosecutors and defense attorneys, to make sure that their rights are protected. However, there is also something called uh, the law and a procedure in which you should go through it in order to, um, have those kind of cases thoroughly and appropriately dug into.
Gotcha.
It taints the pool. It taints the pool of possible victims. That's what it does. It gives them other motives to come forward. And that's not fair.
All right, so R. Kelly was back in court today. You guys are trying to, from what I understand, his defense team trying to get copies of these alleged tapes that exist, that is the basis of some of the criminal case this time around. Now, are you guys trying to get copies of the tapes, or are you trying to get the case thrown out? What exactly were you in court for today, and as far as what it has to do with the alleged tapes?
Well, today we're in court for a status conference. Every month or so, His Honor, which is running this case fantastically well, very open to the public, very fair to all sides, as is this judge's reputation. So it's a status conference. So we come in once a month to see where we're at with the production of discovery and things like that. So the state has had in their possession the alleged Avenatti tape, the tape that Michael Avenatti got from an alleged source who allegedly found it somewhere. A lot of allegedly there because the entire thing's absurd. So that is part of the state's case, and we need to see it. Why it hasn't been copied and produced, I don't know. Certainly, it doesn't take that long to have that done, but there must be a reason. When we get that, we'll be able to intelligently decide what's on it, look to see if it's been altered in any way, have forensic guys look into it and forensic cows look into it, and deal with it that way. But now it's just the collection of discovery. That's all.
And not to mention, there's been, for those of you who are avid followers, of this case as it's been progressing, I'm sure you've all seen, Mike, perhaps you've seen it as well, where we heard there's one tape. But yet, wait, no, there's two tapes. Yet there's three tapes. And I believe Avenatti was the one behind saying every different tape that just kept coming up, supposedly. So, look at the source. And we didn't do anything to put Avenatti in the place he's in. He did it to himself.
And again, he's innocent until proven guilty.
Of course.
Just like our client is.
Right.
But at the same time, look at the source, and now look at what he's accused of. He's accused with Nike of saying, "I will out you. I will do this unless you pay me." Now, how far is that from what he's done now? Because he represents alleged victims who want money from Robert. And I will present this tape and I will give it to the state to make you so scared you will pay money to make these people go away. And the truth of the matter is, looking for money to make real victims go away is a crime in and of itself. All right, and that's not really good. But it looks like his roosters have come home to roost, if that's the proper term.
Indeed. A couple of months ago, we heard some things about R. Kelly trying to travel to Dubai to make money, to support himself. Where is the judge in making a decision on allowing him to travel. Is that going to happen, or are they pretty much like it's not going to happen?
Well, what we've done is the judge really never had a proper motion put in front of him to make that decision. We had toyed around with the idea of going outside the country, but we had been toying around since last August with that idea because Robert's got a huge following outside the United States. India, he's got a great following in the United Arab Emirates and all of the Arab world, and Europe, he's got a huge following. So what we'd like to do is we've always wanted to just get out there and do those things. Some offers came in to do public appearances. So we thought we could turn that into a tour of some kind. It turns out that some of the countries that he would be going to don't have extradition with the United States. So the state has reason to say, look, we don't mind if he works and makes money in the United States and even some countries that do have extradition. But if you're going to ask us to let him go to a country that there's no extradition, this is a person of means. It's not something we'd be willing to just stipulate to. So we would have to make a motion if we wanted to do that. But for the time being, we're completely comfortable, and I'm one of the entertainment lawyers working on it. We're completely comfortable with just having him book stuff here in the United States. It shouldn't be a problem with going to the judge and/or by stipulation with the state, and have him be able to go out of state to do shows and to do events. And we're putting together a little bit of a tour right now that will last the rest of the year to have him go out there. And it's about making some money, but it's really about reconnecting with some of the fans. And the promoters that have contacted us have made it very clear that there is desire for him to come out and do these shows, and they're really excited about doing it.
All right, you guys talk about shows and him making money. One of the things that we keep seeing is R. Kelly is broke. He doesn't have any money. He can't pay his child support, but yet still he has this big legal team and lives in Trump Tower. What's the truth? Is the man broke? Does he have money? What's the story?
Any good lawyer is not going to talk about how much money they're making, right? So it's a great question, but that's just something that, that.
Mike, I will say this: lawyers like Nicole, myself, Steve, we earn good livings. We work hard, but there's something about seeing that justice is done, and we get tapped to get involved in cases. I'll say that very simply, my legal fee is a huge legal fee when someone hires me. I'm not anywhere near asking for a legal fee of any kind, even comparable to that. Why? Because justice needs to be done here. And he just simply doesn't have the funds to pay for the team that he has together. Nicole doesn't come cheap. I don't come cheap. Steve certainly doesn't come cheap. And Steve does excellent, excellent work. And the rest of the team doesn't. But you know what? We're working hard, getting him some shows, have him generate income, and even not necessarily for us, but we need forensic people to look at the videotape and do that. That's the most important thing. The payment on a case like this is knowing that you have the world in some capacities against a guy who is innocent. Somebody got to stand up. Somebody has to. And we have not only millions of fans doing it, but we happen to be in a unique position to actually aid that take place. And I take pride in it. I know she does as well because we talked about this. I take great pride in it.
What about his circle? Obviously, a lot of friends, a lot of family members, people have deserted the man. They don't mess with R. Kelly anymore. What's going on? Any friends left? Any personal circle, or is it just a team of lawyers and handlers now?
He wasn't in court this morning. We couldn't even walk through court with all the supporters that were there. We literally couldn't even get the man out of the building. And this is in court. That's like going to the other side. Is in court. He couldn't even get out of the place. There were so many people supporting him. No, lawyers are not the only one that are all over. Fans are all over him. The amount of emails I get, the Twitter, the tweets, the Facebook posts. He's got a huge following. And I will say this: Michael Avenatti, when he had his problem, all of a sudden people started to change a little, and now they're starting to contact more. We love him. In fact, one woman this morning, she's giving me gifts to give to him. Oh, this is for Robert. I made this thing out of glass for Robert. Give to him. So we have no problem with that. Abandoning him, we got Lady Gaga's, all right, who has her own history with abuse. She feels a certain way with regard to this. Kim Fox, obviously, she voices her own part of her own history with abuse. So I understand where they're coming from. I don't blame them for it, right? But to put pressure on a record company or a business to cut the man off from making a living to support his family on accusations. And I remind you again, and Nicole keeps reminding me of this, that he had already fought against and won in this judicial system. It just doesn't seem right. But he has, it's about 1,000,000,000 to 1 about fan and friends in favor. His circle is probably the biggest circle I've ever seen in my life.
Nicole, Doug just mentioned trial. legal team. The last criminal trial was pushed back for years. Is that the plan this time, or are we going to get a speedy trial this time around?
Well, I think that's a better question for the prosecutor, isn't it? At this point, we can't go anywhere. Our hands are literally tied, handcuffed, until we're able to see the discovery. So the little bit that was turned over today and the little bit that was turned over the last time Steve was in court, it, we can't even begin to formulate a proper defense until we see all that stuff. So let's call them and ask them.
Okay.
When are we going to get our stuff so we can move forward and truly give the facts the attention that they deserve?
Okay, just a couple of more questions. The infamous Gayle King interview, was that the idea of the legal team, or was that all R. Kelly to make that call and make that interview happen?
Doug and myself were not part of the team at that time, so unfortunately, we don't speak on that because we don't know all
Okay.
the answers, and I don't want to give it
I'll
up.
say this: I was having surgery at the time. I was having back surgery, and I learned of it during my back surgery. But it's an interesting thing. Some people say it was smart. Some people say not smart. Robert, we are not Robert's bosses. He is the boss. He is an intelligent person who's actively involved in his defense in every single aspect. We had some meetings recently where he directed the room of attorneys, and that's what he is. He's a brilliant person. He's a brilliant adult, and he makes his own decisions. And at first when I heard about it and that he was emotional on it, I said, it's not something what we like our defendants to do, to speak, but what would you do? You're being falsely accused again after an acquittal on the same thing. What does a human being do? If you don't speak up, nobody said anything. He kept his mouth quiet because he knows he's guilty. If you do speak up, oh, look at him, he's acting weird. It must be rage. It must be absolute rage. I would feel it myself. People accuse me of stealing a sandwich out of my fridge at the office. I get rage sometimes. And here, you're getting accused of the most heinous thing you can't be. I thought it was real and I thought it was intense, and the world should see that. The world should see. I'm happy they did. And statistically, if you look at the polls afterwards, showed people like, you know what? That's what a guy who's being falsely accused would do. Stand up and shout to the world, I am not who these people are saying I am. And they'd stop saying I am if I just doled out all this money. And that's horrible to be in a position like that.
All right, final question, and I'm going to direct this to Nicole. At the beginning of the interview, you said you are an expert in sex crimes, and TMZ is reporting today a new grand jury for alleged sex trafficking involving R. Kelly, saying he allegedly bought plane tickets and set up hotel rooms for underage girls. What do you know about this?
Okay, obviously I can't speak about the details of what the feds are investigating at this point. But what I can tell you is there's been a lot of talks about these airplane tickets. And there's been a lot of discussions about the fact that Robert and or his people were facilitating all that. I can tell you that when you get the whole picture, that picture doesn't look the way they are portraying it to look. And that's what I think both Doug and I are saying, that there's a much bigger picture to this. I know initially these kind of charges are awful. These kind of charges are life-changing. In fact, I tell my clients usually that these kind of charges are worse than a murder charge because murder charges don't have mandatory minimums, but these kind of cases do. Not to mention the public is going to hate someone charged with a sex crime over hating somebody who's murdered someone who perhaps has a reason they did it. So he's in the fight for his life. And the one-sidedness that has come out, which I understand at this point, it's not proper for us to start fighting fact for fact. But I think when you see the whole picture, when everyone has a chance to really see the whole picture, I think people will look back and be like, oh my God, wait a minute. That's the truth? Wait, and they can show us that's the truth? Okay, and it puts that reasonable doubt in your mind.
All right, Nicole Blank Becker and Doug Anton, two members of R. Kelly's legal team. R. Kelly was back in court on Tuesday morning, and we thank you guys for taking time out of your day to join us on the morning mixtape.